Guess what? It's trivia time. Here is your fifth question for the We're Still Here in Concert event coming up on April 14th. As a reminder, you only need to answer one question correctly to be entered into the drawing. What hiking trail location will host the 2024 Audio Checker hike on July 27th? Is it A, Royal Arch, B, Maroon Bells, C, Longs Peak, or D, Myers Gulch? If you think you have the right answer, email us at feedback@aftersight.org or call us at 720-712-8856 for your chance to enter and win 2 tickets to this amazing show. Good luck and thanks for playing. Hey, you're listening to Blindsight. Let's go. Mental health isn't something to take lightly. It's time to fight. It's time to thrive. Let's do this.
Hi there, this is Bill Lundgren, your host for Blindsight. Welcome for another episode. And today, again, I'm going to be working with our producer. He's so good to work with in terms of talking about general subjects. And today, I want to address on a thing that's somewhat controversial, and that is the idea of independence and dependence and how that all works in relationships. And it's an issue, particularly in some of the blindness community in terms of how much we depend on other people. And that's true of anybody with a physical disability. But you know, that issue of independence and dependence came up a lot when I was working with couples and with parents who are working with children. Oh, how much independence do you allow? So we're going to, I think, have a very helpful conversation about independence, dependence, and we'll talk about codependence and narcissism and talk about interdependency. We'll be covering a whole bunch of things. So get your pencil out.
We're going to try to cover 4 or 5 shows in one?
That's right. Absolutely.
I don't know if I'm ready for that, but here we go.
Okay. So how are you, Jonathan?
You know, I'm good. It's been a really good morning. I kind of took it easy. And for those of you who don't know, a little backstory about me, I grew up playing the piano and classically trained. And so today I was feeling like, you know what? I need to sit down. I'm going to calm myself down. So I played a little Chopin, a little Beethoven, some Debussy, and just kind of took about a good hour just to play the piano this morning and relax. And it was so therapeutic.
Yeah, absolutely.
It got rid of a lot of that stress that I'm feeling sometimes.
That's
so
a reminder to all of us that we need to have those kinds of outlets. Find the outlet that works for us.
And it could be a different outlet every single time. So
yeah, absolutely.
Like sometimes it's working out. Sometimes it's playing the piano, art, woodworking, yard doing, your yard cleaning, whatever.
Right.
So yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. It was, it got a little frantic there trying to get all the components together of different things that I'm doing when I really shouldn't be multitasking. Right. I am.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it drives me a little crazy because I'm saying, I've got to do this right now. Yeah, everybody knows that kind of syndrome. And I'm getting better at it. I'm cutting things out.
Yep.
Which is a major thing you have to do.
Isn't that funny how usually it's the trees that are well trimmed that bear the best fruit?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Very interesting.
And certainly this podcast is something that's my favorite. So I'm push everything aside for that.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Me too. Well, get us into this topic of interdependency, dependency, narcissism, all of the isms and isses.
Well, let's talk about independence versus dependence. Because there's a lot of confusion around that. And I'll give you an example of something that happened to me last night that was, I thought it was so telling that it should happen the night before I get into this discussion. I was at a meeting at another site, which was within walking distance. In fact, Aiden and I walked over early in the evening. The meeting went on for an hour longer than scheduled. And I was exhausted. And I got up and I said, I was thinking to myself, do I want to be independent and have Aiden and I walk home in the dark along 13th Avenue and get home, which I'm pretty sure we could do. And then one of the people said, hey, Bill, want to ride? And instantaneously, I decided to become dependent and say yes. Because
I think you decided to be convenient.
Convenient, yeah, exactly. But when we talk in the blindness community, particularly those who've been trained in the training center, that's a big issue because I'm supposed to be, I'm a graduate of the program. I'm supposed to be independent, and anytime I should be independent, I should do it because I need to focus on that. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. But last night, I was not looking for wisdom. I wanted to get home and get to bed.
You just wanted to be comfortable.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Absolutely. There isn't. But some people consider that a mortal sin.
Sure.
And you see, that's where, and it's the same kind of thing when parenting, where, and relationships and so forth. Okay, how much dependency is okay and how much independence. And I remember right after I graduated from the training center, with this focus on independence and so forth, and somebody came along who really wanted to be in a relationship with me, and I resisted because I was afraid I would be going back into some dependent behavior, which had been very unproductive for me prior to coming here when I was back in my home state. And I resisted, but fortunately the person hung around. And what I discovered, or what I had to be reminded, that, I have strengths that other person does not.
Right.
And that other person has strengths that I do not. And we found that we had a relationship where we were able to work on each other's strengths. And that's interdependency.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
That's the ideal, to me, that's the ideal thing. But you see, there's a factor in here, particularly in terms of how many blind people are taught in your pretty standard schools. They never allow the student to go anywhere without a sighted guide with them.
Right.
And this is an anathema, and I will name it the National Federation for the Blind is a proponent, and I think rightly so, of training programs where students learn to be on their own.
Yeah.
And it scares the hell out of somebody who's a new student, including me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a dog then. And, I had the white cane, and the white cane just doesn't really prevent a car from running over you. And I was very aware of that. But through training, through learning and encouragement, I was able to go out. In fact, the travel instructor insisted that I go out by myself to go get a cup of coffee at a restaurant that was some distance away from the school. And now, unfortunately, the restaurant wasn't open, so I had to turn around and come back home. And I got a little confused because I was still new at it. But and after a while, there was a nice lady who I heard footsteps, and the nice lady came by, and I asked her to, where this certain street was, and she told me. And then she said something interesting. She said, do you want to play with me? Now, this was 8:00 in the morning. I thought, oh, is this lady a hooker? She's looking for business at 8:00 in the morning. And she said it again. And what I heard was, will you play with me? And I thought, oh, come on. Of all the people that you could run into as a gay guy, I mean, she's having a really hard night. And then I finally heard her correctly. She said, will you pray with me? That was what she was trying to do. So she and I said, okay, sure. So we prayed, and she prayed for healing for me. And I said, I thought to myself, healing from what?
Right.
And that's, and I pondered that all the way back to the school. But I have to watch my hearing.
Pray for healing for my ears so that I can understand what people are saying.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It's so funny that there's this interesting dichotomy between being independent and being dependent, because so many times we focus on the actionable steps of being independent and dependent. So we I guess substitute one for the other and then feel bad for needing one versus the other. Like in your car situation last night, you were wanting to be independent, and you had every intention of being independent and doing it by yourself and wanting to do it. You had the desire. But when the opportunity presented itself, you were like, you know what? Sure. Yeah, I'll take a ride home. And whether that was just out of, you put any number of emotions or motives behind that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
But you see, the issue to me is, I know that I can walk home by myself. I don't need to prove anything to myself or anyone else. And I said, okay, I can give that up, knowing that it doesn't impact on my feeling of independence. Right. And that's really the key. Now, that woman, I didn't know where I was, but I had to find out. And, she gave me the information what street I was on. And that was a training thing that I really needed, to do some more work for that independence. Yeah. But that's the difference. It's the question of how much independence, and whether asking for help, meaning that we're not giving up an opportunity to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you talked about the relationship aspect, and you run into people who are craving somebody to be dependent on them. And you create these...
The codependent, as we call it.
The codependency and the narcissistic personalities that can be so damaging in relationships.
Right, absolutely.
Many times you don't understand until you're already knee-deep into the relationship. Yeah. And it becomes very disheartening for both people.
Right.
And you realize that as a narcissist, maybe they're not really depending on you because they've learned their voice. They've learned what they need to do in order to survive in this crazy world. And for narcissists, that's not the best thing for them.
That's right.
They don't like it.
But you see, I see, again, we're talking continuum. I see the codependent. See, the codependent says, I don't have any needs. Your needs are the most important. The narcissist says, your needs are not important to me. My needs are important.
Correct.
And that's the imbalance. We're saying, okay, I not only, quote, independent, but in many ways dependent, because we really can't be all that self-centered and be able to get away with it.
No, That's what I call one of the most ironic relationships possible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because both people are so dependent on the other one to give them the negative aspect of the relationship. Now, unpack that sentence 12 times. But, that narcissist depends on the codependent for the dependency.
Right.
And the codependent depends on the narcissist for the independence that they provide.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's like a freaking Dr. Seuss book.
That work, but that works for a while. It just when it wears on. I think it wears more in the codependent than it does on the narcissist, because the narcissist is totally oblivious.
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna give you an opportunity, and we're gonna flip this script, because I had a very interesting conversation with a lady a couple days ago, and I am always looking to have my mind changed and my mind opened, and I was presented with the idea that independence is not necessarily a actionable thing. It's like you have your independence for, doing the car, the, going to the grocery store by yourself, picking out your own clothes, buying your own house, or the dependency for others to help you and that kind of stuff. Those are all actionable independence or dependent items.
Right. Either one.
Right. And so the philosophy that I want to present to you is being able to have the independence of choice. And this goes back to exactly what you were talking about with the car situation. You had the choice. You had the independence and the wherewithal to choose what you wanted to do. And I think where people can get misconstrued and misaligned is that it's an all or nothing thing, that you have to either choose independence and working for yourself, or you have to choose dependence and allowing others to help you. But if you have the independence of choice, you're able to take all the information necessary and choose whether or not you want to be a couch potato or you want to get up and do something. You can choose whether to accept help or not accept help. It's, do I have the tools in my toolbox? That's the first question. And then the second is, do I want to actually use them?
Right. And
so it's very interesting philosophy.
And it's an interesting philosophy in terms of we have to decide, okay, now let's be realistic. Do I, maybe it was more important for me to walk with the dog last night, even though I was tired, because he needs to know that he's able to do the job. And maybe I need to get more training in terms of being able to get back and forth. That's one of the things I have to throw in the equation. Last night would have been a bad time just simply because I was exhausted by the time we, got out of the meeting. But at other times, we have to weigh that. And this is what I think the training centers are trying to, the NFB training centers are trying to teach that, yes, you need to be comfortable with the idea that you can do something by yourself and know how to do it. And for right now, you may, especially when you're in the school, you need to focus on being independent, not asking unless it's absolutely necessary. Like, when I got lost, I needed, it was necessary for me to find out where I was. But, and then know that you have an option.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's more important for people to have the tools and to be able to use them, but then they need to exercise their independence of choice in when and how to use those tools.
But you see, the other end of the spectrum is that the person who's giving the help, on one hand, as a friend of mine said to me once when I was confronted because I wasn't allowing him to help me, he said, you know how good you feel when you help somebody. How
Right.
dare you deny me the opportunity to have those good feelings by helping you?
Sure.
That's one piece of it. The other piece is when people come in and assume they know what you need and don't even ask,
Right. They
and
just
they
start
try
dragging
to
you
take
across the
over.
street.
Yeah. And they,
Yeah.
or if they won't even listen.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the thing I described of a little old lady grabbing me by the arm and dragging me across the street, and my desire to hit her over the head with my white cane was almost overwhelming because she didn't even ask, and I
Right.
didn't really want to cross the street. That wasn't
Right.
what I was standing there for,
Mm-hmm.
but that happens all the time, and people feel
Yeah.
superior because they're helping this blind person or this person with some kind of disability. It makes them feel superior
Mm-hmm.
rather than being helpful. And so many times I have to teach, when I do training at any place I do training of ushers and people like that,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I focus on is to ask.
Yeah.
And then go with whatever, even if you think it may not be such a good idea, you can say, well, I'm concerned about XYZ. But if the person insists, and well, I'm afraid that person's going to get hurt, and it's well, that's the person. That's not your responsibility. If you've
Yeah.
offered and you've pointed out some obstacle, and that person gets hurt, that's not your. That's the way the person learns.
Life is sometimes the best teacher. And no matter how many people are in your life telling you probably shouldn't be doing something, life will tend to teach you the lesson itself, regardless of if you want it to or not.
And especially when you find out that you can actually do it.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that, when I first got Aiden, usually the guide dog school will send an instructor out with you and the dog. So the training can be done with an instructor in your home community. Well, because of COVID, they couldn't do that. So,
right.
And it had been a year since I'd had a dog, and I'd forgotten, the keys I had memorized in order to know where I am and so forth. I had to relearn that. And of course, you have this dog that's, is just delighted to be in a new place and wants to explore. And sometimes it would take an hour and a half to get home, but we did it. But the thing is, I had to relearn how to handle and give instruction to someone, to this dog, to help me. And the people, we have to not just turn off our minds. We have to concentrate on what we're doing to be part. So it's a teamwork between you and whoever is helping you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same in a marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Particularly in a marriage. Or you as a parent know you have to decide how much independence you can give your children, because it has to be age appropriate, skills appropriate. And you also have to teach children what to watch out for and whatever. So there's work that you have to do. And that's what I put in the category of interdependence.
Yep.
And that's the ideal situation where you're equals working together to solve whatever the problem is, to find out. Because if somebody can say to me, this is what you have to watch out for, or whatever, that's helpful for me to then be independent in that area, wherever I am, to get there if that person is not available.
Yeah. Well, you're also talking about different levels of interdependence, or even independence and dependency when it comes to physical dependency, emotional, intellectual dependency. Those are all things that need to be addressed. And I don't think we take enough time to talk about them with other people in terms of like your kids,
Well,
your
we don't
spouses,
ask.
your friends.
We don't ask. Or sometimes when somebody grabs you by the arm and takes you, say, do I want to spend the time trying to train the person the proper way? or do I
Right.
just have to, I won't see this person again, and I'll have to just do it and let them take me there, and then I'll be finished with them. It's that kind of decision making that we have to constantly make. If it's a spouse, yeah, you have to train the spouse in terms of what you need, and that spouse needs to train you.
Yeah. Well, and the whole key to this whole interdependency thing is being able to say, I can humble myself to learn, because if you're not going to do that, you become both dependent and independent, and you start flirting with those boundaries of narcissism and codependency.
Yeah. And sometimes, particularly someone who's, let's say, newly disabled, it just feels, it's too much work for me to try to learn this stuff, and then they become a couch potato, or
right,
and they just, and then they kind of become entrapped in their disability, whatever it is. One of the things that gets everybody scared when they go to a training center, when the training center announces you're going to spend 3 days skiing, you're going to do 3 days of rock climbing, you're going to go whitewater rafting while you're a student of this program. And parents particularly panic because the idea that they have this vision of the kid being floating down a river without a raft.
Yes.
And I'm not a fan of rock climbing, but that was my own issue. But the thing is, I did all of that, and I benefited from that. And I, in fact, I had an opportunity to go whitewater rafting with a few blind friends, not as part of their program. And a friend of mine who was sighted went with us. And the one who was most scared of the whole thing was the sighted person, because he was in this raft with
my gosh,
7 people who were blind, and thinking, but we were having a great time, and we survived it. But it is a matter of learning what you can do, and being able to be independent in the sense of doing what it is if necessary. And if not, to know, as you said earlier, option. To know, to be able to know that you have the option to do this thing by yourself. The other part of it, and this is the tricky part, we are human beings and we're social creatures. We're not, genetically, we are not loners.
No.
We may be, choose to be loners, but we're not loners. So our thing really is, our makeup, emotional makeup, is to hook up with other people and do things together. That's what we get some of our goodies. So that, again, it's that conflict about independence and dependence, but that's not dependence. If we can be an equal partner and make decisions in a group to whether to do something or to try something or whatever, and that we feel partnered rather than feeling less than being taken care of by somebody else.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's a very fine line.
Yeah.
And something actually, it's not really a fine line. It's more of a moving target based on the situation.
Based on the situation. And that's the key word. It's the situation. And like last night, independence, go out. Right. No, I want to get I want to get home.
Yeah. And you're just going to have to weigh the costs and benefit of what it is, whatever decision you're making. And so just making sure that you have the tools to make those decisions is critical. And I think that's where the NFB specifically can give you those tools. And even like the Colorado Center for the Blind, you have the ability to learn tools. You learn how to use a hammer, a saw, like all those things. Being able to cross the street, being able to order off a menu, learning how to use a phone and technology and Braille, and like all the things that you want to learn are tools to be able to use later at your disposal.
Right.
It's not that you don't have the tools, just got to use them.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is, if you're not allowed to use the tools, like the training programs where they always have a sighted guide with you, you never have the feeling that you're capable of being on your own.
Yeah, I think it becomes an issue of not giving people the ability or the freedom to explore their own surroundings, or the freedom to make mistakes, the freedom to hurt themselves, the freedom to, do all the look at all these blind athletes.
Exactly.
I mean, to think about, Eric Weimer climbing Everest as somebody who is blind. First, I wouldn't do it sighted.
Right.
Second, I don't even know.
That's not my thing.
No. But if he didn't go out and explore and push himself and adapt and do all those things, there's no way he would have ever done it. Think of all these athletes who are in the Olympics coming up.
Right.
And the amazing things that they do, not just because they're blind, but because they're athletes. And
right.
in their core, they are athletes first.
Yeah.
Their blindness is just an aspect of the sport.
That is, I think, the very key thing. What is in the forefront? Is it my blindness, or is it all the other things that I can do, even with blindness?
Yeah.
And that's when we move, what I call stage 4 and 5, where I recognize that I'm blind, but now what? And then the fifth one where, okay, I'm blind, but I'm also all these other things. And that's where we get trapped in stopping, where we just, I'm blind and I've got to, that's everything has to center around that. And it doesn't.
Yep.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
And it was helpful for me not to have an instructor with me because, Aiden and I had to learn about each other and where the points are that I have to pay attention to in order to get home at a reasonable time. And, pay attention to my part, which is the decision making on the dog handler's viewpoint versus the dog is, the dog is ready to go any place, anytime, anywhere.
Absolutely. Yep. They are.
Yeah. So you have to put in some control, just as you as a parent have to put some control on the children so they don't, they don't hurt themselves. But at the same time, you also have to know sometimes the kids have to, get a scrape in order to learn what not to do.
Yeah.
And it's a tough balance always. And it's an individual decision. And, there's no, you and I can't tell everybody, this is the rule you have to follow. Everybody has to make that decision as to what works for them.
Yeah. And that's where it's good just to say, hey, I have a suggestion. If you're willing to hear it, I'd love to give it to you. But if not, I'll keep it to myself.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do for a lot of people. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, well, Bill, this has been a really interesting conversation, and I think it's worth coming back to. We've got some amazing things coming up. We have a new show launching in May called Game Changers. And so that'll be launching, and that's all about blind athletes and the sports that they play. So everything from the Olympics to everyday sports to outdoor sports to beat ball, goal ball.
Wow.
Just that'll be everything.
Wonderful.
It's going to be amazing. So if you guys know of anybody who would like to be on the show or have a blind athlete or low vision athlete who you think we need to hear their story, give me a call, 720-712-8856, or you can email us if you don't want to use your voice at feedback@aftersight.org. Those are the best ways to get a hold of us. But Bill, what closing thoughts do you have for us?
Well, the closing thought to what you just announced is, do you have space for a totally incompetent, even when I was sighted, athlete?
Yes, we do. We'll cover everything from chess to Chinese checkers to shuffleboard.
Right. There you go.
To solitaire to, all that stuff. We got it covered. We got you covered.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to look at person with a disability to look at how can I be more independent, but also to how can I encourage other people to support my independence, but be available when it looks like it's something that would be helpful to me
Right.
to have you help, but not take over for me. Let me have that, that ability to make those choices.
Yeah.
Okay. So this has been Blindsight with Jonathan Price and Bill Lundgren discussing today. If you have feedback, some ideas for this show, it's feedback at aftersight.org or by telephone. The feedback line is 720-712-8856. We would love to hear from you. We always listen to and try to incorporate what other people ask us to do. So on behalf of all of us here at AfterSight, take care. Have a great week.